Hey everyone, welcome to the Inspire to Fire podcast. My name is Chris and I'm your host. And today I'm very excited. We have a amazing guest. Her name is Shang and she is at savemysense.com. She also goes by Save My Sense on Instagram. That's where we kind of connected. So I really am excited to have her share her story with you guys. I think it's going to make an impression and be able to really help a lot of people. So, Shang, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
All right. So yes, that's your story is amazing. It inspired me, and that's what this show is all about, to bring inspiration to others. So if you can, just go a little bit into your story and tell us why, I think you're so amazing.
Chris, you are speaking too highly of me. What I want people to know is that I believe that financial independence and financial success is attainable by many people, especially in the United States, provided that you put yourself into the right mindset. And how I sort of got this journey all figured out, it's a lifelong journey.
Right.
I came into the United States as an immigrant along with my parents. We didn't have a lot of money at all. My parents worked very hard, taught me the value of a dollar. So with my very first paycheck, I always learned to live on less than I earn, save the difference, and invest. Investing being the key word. And,
Yes.
Was kind of, doing the thing for many years. Then I met my husband, Mr. Save My Sense. And when we got married, we decided that, gosh, what if we could exit the rat race and never be derailed by one or both of us losing our income? What would that need to look like? That's when we decided to live off of the lower of our two incomes while living in a very high cost city in Manhattan, no less. And while we did that, that meant that our savings rate, pre-tax savings rate was, over 50%. And doing that consistently for a couple of years, investing the difference, meant that we reached a net worth off of which we could retire early or, be work optional for the rest of our lives. And that I didn't even know that was called FIRE back then. I just thought that we were just being really, really frugal. And then later I learned about the blog, Mr. Money Mustache, and I started blogging about my own experience. And that's sort of how I fell into the personal finance realm of Instagram and blogs and all of that.
Awesome. How did you end up in Manhattan, such a high cost of living area? How did that happen?
Yeah. So I left China at the age of 3. I lived in Europe until I was 10. And then I came to the United States at the age of 10. I always grew up around big cities. So I've always been drawn to metropolitan areas. I worked in Boston after college. I went to business school in Chicago, and I had set my sights on San Francisco after that, which I did. I landed a tech job in San Francisco. When I met my husband, that was in business school. We were long distance. He was in New York. I was in San Francisco. Long distance sucks. Hate long distance.
Yes.
Nearly broke up our relationship, but we managed to keep it together, got married. Then we looked at both of our careers and realized that New York is just a more flexible place for people like us. There's just a lot more opportunity. Yes, it's very high cost, but it made more sense. And the fact that we're cosmopolitan in personality, we do love being in a more international, diverse location. And we love culture and the arts in New York City. I mean, there's no comparison to anywhere else in the United States. So.
Well, and I have family in New York, so I completely understand, and I'm up there all the time, so I see what you see as well. It's an amazing city. What's going on right now is a bit unfortunate, of course, but New Yorkers, they have a sense of a way of bouncing back, and they're very prideful. So I'm sure everything is gonna recover soon and be better than ever. But touch on kind of how you managed to achieve such a high savings rate. Was there any tips or tricks or advice that you would give for someone who has, that similar lifestyle, but also wants to achieve FIRE and kind of sees it as almost impossible because things are so expensive?
Yeah. If you want to get to really high savings rates in expensive cities, a high income is going to help. When I say that I believe in financial independence and financial success for many people, I don't mean that you need to live in an expensive city. In fact, when I coach people, when I talk to other people, for many of them, I say, look, your job is very portable. I know, you would like to be in the city, but if your dream is financial success, perhaps, consider going to a suburb or going to a slightly lower cost city across the US where your job is still in demand. In New York City, the base rent is just so high to begin with. Unless you find really cool, unique opportunities such as a rent stabilized apartment, which is what my husband and I were able to land on through connections. Or let's say you do something really creative, like you get one lease and then you put more people into the apartment than there should be. I mean, there's a lot of gray area. We try to do everything by the book. So, we went for a rent stabilized situation. And then everything else is being as frugal as can be, redefining what it means to have a need, what it means to have a want. Most people, when they start on this financial independence journey, they can at least identify here's a need and here's a want. But what we had to do was even redefine what a need was. When I first went into this, I thought that it was a given that my apartment would be functional, and then it's not. A rent stabilized apartment doesn't mean it's a nice apartment. It was a walk up, so 4 flights of stairs up and down every time. There was not a lot of repairs going on, so our bathroom didn't function well all the time. There was no dishwasher and a smaller fridge than normal. No laundry services anywhere in the building, so we went out to a local laundromat. And also, even thinking in terms of transportation, many people in New York City don't even think twice about taking an Uber when the subway is not available. For us, that was not an option unless you were sick. So if we had to walk 20, 30 minutes to get somewhere, we walked 20 to 30 minutes. And when people first hear about that extreme frugalism, I've been called a cheapskate, I've been called cheap. And I really want to emphasize that if you paint it in that negative viewpoint, and you see this as deprivation because your relative reality is somewhere up here, and the standard of living that I'm experiencing is lower than what you expected, then it's not going to work. You're going to be miserable. It wasn't until I started gratitude journaling and using this technique that I call trigger, action, reward. I talk about a lot on my blog, where every time that I was triggered to feel bad about myself, I used that same trigger to rewire my brain and do something that made my situation better, that was frugal, that did save money. And then I rewarded myself mentally by having done that. And that, and what I now call the hashtag I get to, I didn't invent it, but it's a very great way to summarize it. Put all your I have to's into I get to statements. I have to go to work is now I get to go to work. I have to walk down 4 flights of stairs. I get to be able-bodied and walk down 4 flights of stairs. And that rewiring of my mind into gratitude, into realizing the abundance in my life was what really allowed me to pare back on those expenses down to the very, very bare minimum that made sense for my husband and myself.
Wow. I mean, that's super powerful. And I like that mindset shift that you're talking about. I mean, even now, especially with what's going on, we used to say a lot, I have to go to work, or, I have to do this. And now we're saying, I get to go outside, or I get to, finally go back to work. So it's kind of, sometimes we have to have something external introduced into our into our lives for that to trigger. But you're saying just trigger it internally in your day-to-day, and it'll become a habit for you to think that way. Is that kind of right?
You really hit the nail on the head. It's a habit. And I often encourage people to say, and I get to, the first thing you get up in the morning, because if you start your day off on a positive note, it's just energizing. It's the healing that you're looking for that doesn't depend on other people's opinions of you. It doesn't depend on how the world chooses to label you. It's completely driven from within. And that's a sustaining source of energy that no one can take away from you.
Yeah, I agree, and definitely powerful. And so emotions play a huge part with your journey and how others perceive you, etc. So can you talk about how you've been able to manage your emotions around finances and maybe people's perspective, either family or otherwise?
I am the more emotional of the two in the relationship. I often like to say Mr. Save My Sense is devoid of emotions. But as neurological research shows, it is actually our emotional side, the right side of our brains that allow us to analyze and take in information and make decisions. If we actually lack emotions, we also lack the ability in our brains to make the final rational decision. It's so counterintuitive, but I've been reading all about that. Boiling it down, emotions are important. You should have your emotions. You should allow yourself to be vulnerable. You are valid in whatever you feel as a result of unfortunate or current circumstances beyond your control. However, you need to recognize when to stop letting the emotions rule your thinking. So something that I often say is put out a timer, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 hours, and go stew on all those emotions and all the anger and frustration and anxiety, and let's let it run its course. And then when the timer hits, shut it off and say, okay, now I've ranted and cleared my head. I'm going to try to do my research and talk to people and try to make a decision that's not ruled by emotion, because emotional financial decisions, by and large, from what I've seen from coaching dozens and dozens of people, it's not optimal. It can lead you to make choices that land you in more hot water than it's worth.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And having, yeah, your emotions, it's healthy to let them out, like you said. So I like that idea of letting them out. It's okay. It's normal. We're all human. But after 10 to 15 minutes of kind of wallowing in your sorrows, or letting them get the best of you, then you say, okay, you know what? We're going to do something proactive here, and go from there. So that's an amazing strategy. You've come up with some great strategies for this, as far as mindset and helping others. Is this something that you go through in your coaching sessions?
Yes. This is not from me. I happen to have landed on these strategies in my own struggle to, be okay with being frugal and having the FOMO. And, my friends graduate. I went to University of Chicago, Booth School of Business, one of the top MBA programs in the world. My friends, some of them make a lot more money than I do. I make plenty of money. I don't, I love my job and everything. But there are friends who show off everything that they do and the nice things that they buy and houses and the vacations and whatnot. And getting into the mindset of gratitude and letting my emotions not cloud my judgment, that I had to develop on my own. And then now, in the past couple of years, I've been reading the actual literature that supported everything that I tried to do on my own. I could have made this a lot easier for myself by reading a bunch of books on psychology. It's funny because when people go into personal finance, they read books about finance. They read books about here's how to set a budget, here's how to pay off your credit card by interest rate or by your smallest balance, or consider investing like this. Very dry books about numbers. No one talks about the mindset. I mean, I know there's some people that do it now, but I've been reading books like The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, Mindset by Carol Dweck, and Viktor Frankl is the Man's Search for Meaning is the most influential person in my life when it comes to mindset, because it's from his writings that I learned you may not be able to choose the situations and the circumstances that you are in, but you can choose your emotions. And as an emotional person, that blew my mind, because I was like, no, I can't choose my emotions. They just come and I can't control them and they just happen. And then I learned through therapy to control my emotions. And I would say that in and of itself, that the therapy, the books that I've been reading, the struggles that I had to do on my own, all of that resulted in the trigger action reward technique. And yes, I definitely teach that to my clients. In fact, when people approach me for help and I learn about their finances, I learn about their background, I probably spend 75% of my time addressing the mindset, because I was like, if the mindset becomes healthy, everything else comes a lot easier.
Right. So somebody who is interested in getting coaching from you, and is still on the fence about this FIRE lifestyle, maybe I haven't convinced them yet, and they want a little bit more reassurance. How do you go about maybe not convincing them, but seeing if that's something that they, works for them. There's a lot of different fire types, so you can pursue fat
Yeah.
fire, you can go to slow fire. So there's a range there. How do you kind of work within somebody's lifestyle or situation to help them figure that
Yeah.
out?
I'm an example of someone who's breaking a bunch of fire rules. If you really, I still work. I still live in a very expensive part of the country. I don't need to be in New York City. And I say work optional because I am currently on a maternity leave. I'm not getting paid. I chose to take, up to a year off to be with my firstborn son. It's amazing.
Congrats. Yes,
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you. The question that I asked to figure out what people really want, I said, if money were no object, what would you do with the time that's given you? And, a lot of people come up with really beautiful dreams, caring for loved ones, going out to do humanitarian work, or, finishing this creative project they've had in their heads for years, being more present for their children, et cetera, et cetera. Fire isn't about being a monk and being that frugal person forever. It's about buying time back from your life. It's about the fact that the rat race doesn't have to be the rat race. You can still do a part-time job, get the health insurance, because I know healthcare really sucks in the United States, and you can still have that healthcare and say, but I know I chose to do this laid back job so I can get an extra 10 hours a week out of it or something. Or for me, it's having that time with my son. For my husband, it is the not so much reassurance, it's the peace of mind knowing that even if we were to lose our jobs, which COVID poses a very, very scary situation for anyone. I think anyone could be affected. And we're sitting here going, we're so thankful for our jobs. And we also recognize if we were to lose them today, we're not going to be in a lot of trouble. So what is it that you want from your life? What is it that you value? The coaching and the stuff that I write is all about, well, make sure that the way you spend your time, your resources aligns with those values, and you're not just going through life just because everybody else is doing the same darn thing.
Yeah. And that's powerful. It's being purposeful with your money, with your time, and what you value. So I like that. And I've struggled with that as well. When I first started, I didn't realize that there was a concept like fire. I just thought that, when I chose my career, I said, I'm going to be working until I'm 65. I better like what I'm doing. So that was the mindset I had. And then a few years into my career, I found the fire movement, and I was like, really? I can get off the hamster wheel? That's a thing. So that opened my eyes. So just that eye-opening experience. But then there's the other issues with the mindset, I guess, is what family might think or what friends might think. So that's something that I struggled with. I haven't completely opened up to family. They don't really know what I'm pursuing, even though I believe in it and I'm really excited about it. But it's hard because you're living a double life sometimes. So does your family know or understand the fire movement?
My parents did not and still do not. I really allowed my father's efforts. He didn't start investing until close to age 40. He truly a rags to riches kind of story. He is a multimillionaire today. He's done very well for himself and he enjoys life. They buy nice, fresh groceries. They drink wine all the time and they do travel a lot and they enjoy life and they buy gifts for my little kid. And when they see, the fact that I still am okay with eating frozen food or that I don't always drink, they're like, Shang, you gotta enjoy more. Like, why work so hard and not enjoy any of it? I get it. And those little comments just add up each day. It's like, Shang, why aren't you doing this? Why? And I recognize that people's opinions of how you choose to live are not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of them. Because my parents work so hard for everything, they like to enjoy it. It feels like so counterintuitive to their value system that I'm not living in the same way. This is what I would suggest for anyone who is facing pressure. And it's not just even on journeys to fire. People on journeys to pay off debt face the same exact thing. You can love the people who who are meaningful in your life, your relationships with your families and your friends. And I know not everyone has good familial relationships. You can love and respect those people and not live like them. I often change the subject. If people want to talk about my frugal, I'm like, oh, hey, what do you think about that latest news article over there? Try to deflect a little bit. Or I also try not to complain about my frugality. I think when people pick up on negativity, then they really poke at it. So in the beginning, yes, I complained a little bit about our dingy little apartment. I don't live in that apartment anymore. Then I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just not going to talk about the crazy apartment that I live in, because it's just going to raise more conversations than it's worth. And finally, I would say sometimes something that I just say to make myself feel a little bit better. It's like, well, opinions don't pay the bills most of the time. I mean, my boss's opinion of me is very important because my boss is paying my bills indirectly. Yes. And your debtors, your lenders, the people who you borrow money from, they better still think that you're worthy of credit. So that might be another one. But most of the time, I'm just like, opinions are opinions, and I choose not to be affected by it. But it is hard. This is an opinionated society. People want to talk and blurt out and tweet everything that they want to say. So shutting off is usually the number one thing. Just unfollow, mute. It's okay.
Yeah, and that can be. I heard this term from another podcast. They're called Friends on Fire. I love them, and I've been on their show. So I wanted to kind of give this a shout out. They touched on a topic kind of like called the fire extinguishers, which what are things that can put out your fire movement, fire journey.
I like that. That's amazing.
So I thought that was pretty cool. And this, I think, is one of them. Not sure if they mentioned it, but family and friends and their opinion, their perspective on what you're doing can really put out the fire that you're on. And, and if you, like you mentioned, if you kind of open yourself up with that negativity and you kind of invite their opinions in, that can be something that you're not doing that any benefits to yourself by doing that. You should show them the positives if that's what you want them to see, and if you want them to be supportive, in my opinion, and hopefully they'll see that and they'll see by example, and they're gonna say, hey, what's going on with Shang over there? She seems a little happier than most people. What's going on? And so I think that might be a good strategy as well.
I love that term, fire extinguisher. And I also want to raise and say, you know what? Not all fire extinguishers need to understand you at the end of the day. Sometimes you just let them be. There are many toxic relationships I have observed in the people that I coach, just forms of abuse of all kinds, or just dysfunction or trauma. And you are not responsible to be the parent of your parents. You're not responsible for parenting the trauma out of your friends, for example. And so for that reason alone, I say, you know what? Sometimes you just gotta recognize that's just a toxic person or a toxic situation and put up some boundaries. Boundary setting is very important. It's so healthy. It's so good for mental health. And you got to learn to do it. You have to enforce the boundaries, because the person who hurts the most when boundaries are violated is you. And so you have to be the enforcer.
Yes, exactly. And touching a little bit about just fire extinguishers and things that can basically be an obstacle towards your fire journey. I want to touch a little bit about struggles, because a lot of people are struggling right now, and it's tough. So it's hard to kind of bring up the topic of, hey, let's strive for financial independence. And then we hear 36 or I believe 36 million people at the moment are unemployed. So I wanted to kind of touch on, maybe, did you have any struggles? Because I think it's important. Every fire journey is going to have some struggles, and they're different for everyone. So I wanted to see if there's anything that maybe particularly stood out for you, and how you overcame, and how you continue to have that mentality and not let it derail you.
Yeah. Towards the end of our most intense journey of fire, like the 5 years we were able to sustain 50% savings rate consistently, my husband lost his job. And he was unemployed for a very long time. I don't want to, dig into it, but it's way longer than the average unemployment for us. And at first I was like, okay, honey, just go do your best, go network, figure out. And I try not to be too involved. But the longer it dragged on, the more it affected me. I was doing the same kind of work I always did at work. It's, very complex management consulting. And I was starting to operate under a brain fog. I would look at giant spreadsheets and a ton of research and not be able to make any conclusions from it. I couldn't write for the heck of me. My emails kept having all these errors. I kept messing up calendar dates. And I was like, what the heck? Like, this is not me, but it keeps happening. And there's a really, really great article. I think it was New York Times, or it was a research done a couple of years ago, where they said people under less than ideal circumstances, whether it is poverty, always like, continual debt, financial stresses, divorce, abuse, whatever, those environments create so much stress that your body picks up that the stress, internalizes it, and actually causes your brain to make irrational decisions, no matter how smart you are. So I want people to understand that your struggles are real and they translate into poor mental and physical health. There's actual, like Dr. Caroline Leaf writes about this, how mental health literally changes the proteins and reaction pathways in your brain to actually release different chemicals and things going on in your body. So absolutely, struggle is a part of life and we all try to avoid it, but it's here, it's inevitable, it's terrible. And you know what? If you guys don't like seeing, someone else, doing really well, mute it. Like, I'm not asking people who are down on themselves to follow me. If it makes you feel bad about yourself, turn it off. If a really great friend just does something that triggers you, turn it off. Like the first avoidance is always turn off the triggers. Then you have to learn to address your triggers. And now is a difficult time. Please, 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 for anyone who's been furloughed or laid off or lost everything, whatever, this is not your fault. Coronavirus came out of nowhere.
Yes.
No one could have predicted this happening. It's not your fault. Try not to internalize too much. Try to just focus on one step at a time, an hour at a time, a day at a time. I know it's not easy, and it's not going to be easy for a long time. I'm running a giveaway right now. It's probably going to be closed by the time you publish the podcast. But I'm seeing stories from so many people who've lost so much, and it's hard, and it's hard to stay upbeat. And that's why I go back to Viktor Frankl, because he writes about people in Nazi concentration camps, not to bring all the tone of this whole thing down, but the thing is, like, even in difficult circumstances like these, we can still try every day to rewire our brain to at least emotions that can sustain us rather than emotions that drain us. Mm-hmm. So that's my encouragement.
I mean, that's amazing. And to unpack a little bit about, all that is, I'm going to have those resources in the show notes, because those books, I need to also read them as well. The philosophy, or the mindset, is so important. But also what you touched on is not blaming yourself for what struggle you're currently going through. Mm-hmm. I mean, especially with this pandemic, like you said, it came out of nowhere. It's affecting millions. This is not your fault. The position that you're in, yes, maybe you could have done certain things differently, but nobody could have predicted what mm-hmm. we were going to go through these last few months. So that giveaway that you're doing, I saw it on Instagram, and I hope to lead my audience to that as well, because I think it's amazing. You're giving away money that you've been able to fundraise, and you're giving it away to people who need it the most for mm-hmm. their groceries or their rent, mm-hmm. etc., or their gas to get to work when they're just starting out again. So that's the stuff that I really admire, and that's why I wanted to bring you on. And then the other last part that I kind of wanted to unpack a little bit is the social media aspect of it, because I've heard it time and time again that social media is our highlight reel. That's what mm-hmm. we put, and not for everybody. I've seen where you put things where you've struggled, and I like that because it's important. But for most, they see highlight reels, everything, the best of someone's life, and they don't see the other side. So turning that off, if that triggers you, I think is super important as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then, so getting a little bit into things that can motivate you throughout, like to push through the struggle. I know you have money mantras. Are there any, like favorite money mantras, anything that you kind of like, a quote that stands out or something that's impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, I get to is the main one. Again, someone please tell me who invented this phrase. But it's the main one. I get to do this, I get to do that, because it also allows me to recognize very, very basic things like clean water. We have clean water and soap in this country. A lot of countries do not. Or the fact that, yes, we have functioning hospitals, or we don't have rampant violence and warfare on our soil. Again, this is speaking as an American. That being said, another technique that I used, and this was actually during my infertility journey. So a lot of people who follow me on Instagram for a while also know that my baby came about through IVF, but IVF was not successful for a long time. And in those moments of grief and mourning, another thing that I learned, a coping technique, was I reached out to my close friends, and instead of like wallowing about my pain, which I was in a lot of pain and they knew, I said, what's going on in your life and how can I pray for you? I'm a Christian, so for me, prayer is a very important part of my spiritual life. And my friends went through stuff too. Like I have friends with cancer, or their parents have cancer. I have friends who lost jobs. I have friends who also are going through their own infertility journey, or maybe their children are not exactly the healthiest children in the world. And every morning on my walk to work, I would be praying for all my friends as I walked. And doing that allowed me to shift the focus away from the internal angst that was going on and care for people that I really, really cared about. And that maybe that this is not something that everybody wants to do, but I always say, you know what, it helps to have community. You need to have people in your field, your supporters. You cannot do any of this alone. And if you don't have people in your corner, at least identify the people who are not in your corner and reduce your exposure there. Sometimes new friends present themselves. When I started this journey, and I realized I was just like trying to hang out with the people who are spending a lot of money because I wanted that lifestyle. And then I noticed like there were friends who were texting me all the time, hey, Shang, can we like meet up? Or I would love to see you again. And I realized these were actually the relationships I should be maintaining, because these were people who really wanted to see me regardless of what I was going through. And really flipping that mindset also allowed me to not be so alone.
Yeah, I mean, having a support system is so important. And like you said, identifying who is there for you, regardless of whether you have to go out to spend money with them, or if it's like retail therapy, like some friends like to do, hey, let's go to the mall. But the ones that are there for you regardless of the situation, that's key. So that's a really good point. And it seems like you have like big philanthropic, I think I said that right, philanthropic dreams. Seems like you have a big heart, and I love that you're trying to give back. Is there anything that you're trying to do in the future? I mean, you're still fairly young, very young.
Yeah.
So I got to be careful, So, but yeah. So I wanted to know kind of like what your philanthropic dreams were. I think you've mentioned that before.
Yeah. My husband once heard of, he's also at a consulting firm, that they were engaged by a Russian oligarch. And the project was, this Russian oligarch did not know how to be happy and wanted this firm to tell them how to be happy. And I was like, what kind of project is this? The conclusion that they made was that he should give his money away. And this is actually said in the Bible. So for me, it's already been pounded in my head since I was young, but also it was counterintuitive, because like you would think that money and career success and all of that is actually what brings fulfillment and joy into one's lives. And my God says that's not it. And so recognizing my privilege and recognizing the gifts that have been bestowed upon me, I have philanthropic dreams, not only to give away all the profits that I make from Save My Sense, during the course of running Save My Sense, but also to raise money for scholarships. I'm so inspired by Sylvia Long. She died a couple years ago. She is a legal secretary out of Brooklyn, lived frugally all her life, never made six figures, left behind an $8 million scholarship for education. Absolutely wonderful. And I want to emulate that. I would like to also, again, give away most of my wealth over my lifetime to support education, which I really, really believe in. because I do think that can make a huge difference in someone's lives. It definitely made a big difference in my father's and myself. And also because I do subscribe to the idea, because I have experienced nice things. I have gone on nice vacations and I have owned nice objects and done, fancy dining experiences. Those things are temporary joy. You get a spike in your dopamine center. You're like, rah, rah, that was awesome. But if you do it once, it's like a drug. You got to do it better and bigger next time to get the same level of pleasure. Whereas giving, no matter how small an amount, is addictive in a positive way. It's you making difference in someone who doesn't have what you have. And that joy is it's so beautiful, and I really recommend it for people who don't have joy in their lives but can give a little bit. Try giving your money away. It probably is the answer that you're looking for.
And that's so counterintuitive, right? I mean, a lot of people think of the FIRE movement and they say we're a bunch of people that just like to hoard money, or we're cheap and we don't want to spend our money. We just want to keep everything. But you're not the first person, and there's so many people in the community who actually want to give away their money. They're just trying to secure themselves, it seems like, first, make sure that they're in a good position. And then once that happens, I mean, it's a lot of people who reach financial independence at late 20s, early 30s, even mid 30s. They have so much more time left, and that money is going to continue to compound. Sometimes us being overachievers, we over save, and then we realize, wait, we are actually not going to spend this amount of money. A lot of people with fat fire dreams, they may reach that point and then they don't know how to spend the money. So you end up with money left over. And what I piggyback on that thought process is fulfillment comes a lot from giving, making a difference. And then fulfillment is really where you can derive happiness, from what I've seen. And that goes back as well to that psychological and mindset thinking. But yeah, that's great. And I think it's super important what you're doing. And I hope you get to realize all those dreams.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And so as far as after you've reached, the conclusion that you're going to go push through the struggle and you want to know, okay, what can I do in order to really get things done? I know that you're into some productivity tips. I know that you're working on that. So can you share that with us?
Yes, there was a running joke in college from one of my friends. She's like, Shang, I swear you have a twin running around the campus with you because there's no way you can do everything that you claim to do in one day. And so, I used to be the master multitasker. I can do many things at once. More recently, though, I've been really promoting, I didn't invent this concept, really great book called Deep Work and Focused Work. Thinking Fast and Slow, another great book that talks about this. And so nowadays, for me, productivity is this. You set your priorities. Those priorities guide what your daily to-do tasks are. And you can use different systems, Pomodoro and Inbox Zero and things like that to actually figure out your day. And then at the end of it, you also have to not let perfection be the enemy of good enough, and launch it, send it off, get your feedback on it right away. And so that's the system. And I had a series on productivity on my blog. And and I want people to recognize being productive and being busy are not the same things. And I also think that in the United States, there's a culture of worship of being busy. FIRE is all about the opposite. It's about like leaning out and like chilling and all of that. So when I teach productivity, it is with the lens of make sure that you are putting time against your priorities. For me, it is being there for my child, building relationships with my husband and my parents and my friends. And yeah, also making sure that my costs are covered. So that's kind of like the cascading sequence. And if you can time block really well and be productive, then you can get more of what you hope to accomplish out of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, truly. And you hit it right on the head too, because in our country, we have this idea where busy is a good thing. So a lot of times you're like, oh, we're too busy. But are we really busy, or are we just filling up our time with things that we think are necessary, but aren't really? I get a ton of emails all the time, and most of it is just promotional. and social emails. And it's tough to keep up. And my inbox actually gives me a little bit of anxiety when I see it, when I have over 30 emails that I haven't read and I know I
Mm.
have to get to. So I have been cutting down the emails, unsubscribing to things that I don't find value in and I don't actually want to receive an email from. And I've gotten it down to less than 10 emails a day. And it's made a huge difference on my life. I don't have that constant blinking on my phone telling me I need to check it. So that's one tip that I would recommend as well to anybody. Just getting rid of the extra stuff that doesn't provide value to you, trying to streamline your emails. Um, One other thing that I've mentioned, I don't know if you do this, but the night before, if I want to get something done the next day, I realize my mornings are my most productive. So
Mm-hmm.
I try to set a list in the night before of a few things that I'd like to get done for sure that day. And I try to knock that out at the beginning of the day, cross them off my list, and then I know the afternoon, it's gravy. Whatever gets done in the afternoon is, I can have a beer or whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. Uh, well, with a baby, your mornings are, dedicated to baby. I'm glad I have a
Yes,
little
yes.
baby sitting right now. I also say no one to stop. Some people grind and grind past midnight because you're stuck. You can't finish it. I often try to, well, consulting has really long hours, but I try to send my teams home no later than midnight, 1 a.m. because I know productivity just tanks after that. And there's nothing that's going to be good out of them. I'd rather that people try to get, 6, 7 hours of sleep, 8 hours of sleep, and come back a little bit more refreshed in the morning. And then, usually something clicks by that
Hmm.
time.
Yeah, sometimes your brain just needs those 6 to 8 hours of sleep to regather itself, and then in the morning you'll be surprised. Thoughts, your mind gets clearer, and you're like, wait a second, I don't think even if I stayed up 2 extra hours last night, I don't know if I would have come up with this conclusion, or I would have just put stuff that's just not good on paper.
Yeah.
And so that's a key tip too. Sleep. What a surprise. All right. And then speaking about, like just overall health, I mean, this all means nothing like the financial independence journey. If you get to it or when you get to it, doesn't mean much if you're not healthy yourself, if you're stressed and you're not taking care of yourself. Um, so what have you seen? I mean, healthcare is so difficult to manage in this country. There's so many different things that go into it. Um, can you share a little bit about how you've been able to get a grip on healthcare? Because I don't think that's something that's talked about enough.
Yeah. Healthcare is a four-letter word, in my opinion, especially in the United States. I mean, I understand there's pros and cons to a privatized healthcare system, which is the US, versus a public healthcare system in other countries. You pay either way. People just don't, in a public healthcare system, you don't see where your pay actually goes. In the privatized healthcare system, I would say you have to be your own strongest advocate. So, and also 1 in 4 healthcare bills are wrong because of some stupid, miscoding or typo or just, wires getting crossed. When I went through IVF, I kept my IVF binder. It's like this thick, thick, thick binder of some instructions on how to inject myself, but mostly bills, 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 and more bills that were just wrong. And I would watch them come in because I knew the prices of things. I knew my insurance. Thank God my insurance covered everything. But sometimes they would say that I have a bill. And then I have to back out time, leave a voicemail with the hospital, call my insurance company to figure out what's going on, try to connect the billing department and my insurance company together, but the billing department doesn't pick up. And just keep saying, this is not right. How can we fix this? Can we please take a look at it? The hospital didn't believe me until I marched in one day with my IVF binder and I spread out all the papers on the billing desk so she couldn't shoo me out of the room. I'm like, just please take a look at this paper that says I owe $10,000. That's not right. $10,000 is a lot. And like, a CSR brushed me off. She's like, oh, we'll take care of it. I'm like, no, $10,000 is a lot of money. We need to address it. And yes, I'm a bossy lady. I'm very salty about all of this. And New Yorkers are aggressive in general. So, that's my personality. But it's so important to advocate because it is such an unequal system. And it is tough that your insurance is tied to your employment. So if anything, I would prioritize healthcare, get second opinions, do your research. Prices can wildly vary for the same procedure in the same city. Like some some doctors just choose to bill more for it, and some choose to bill a lot less. I don't know how. I just know that that's how it works. And some drugs can be had for less from one pharmacy versus another. There are better tools like Good RX is one of them, and there's always people trying to solve it. It's such a complex system. It's just there's no one fixed solution. So I would say for now, just do what you can to advocate, work the system, ask other people for help. And if anything, if you are not dying, if you're not in an emergency situation, don't agree to treatment or drugs immediately. Always say, okay, gather the information, do another call to your health insurance provider to make sure what is and what is not covered before you undergo anything elective.
So that by being prepared, you're saying it was $10,000 of incorrect charges that were being billed
Yeah,
to you?
yeah,
And were you able
$10,000.
to reverse that and get them to fix that?
Yes, they fixed it.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome.
Mhm.
So yeah, and the fact that you were prepared with the binder probably instilled a little bit of fear in them, right? Like, oh, we better not mess with her.
Yeah, it's hard because you're also the sick person because
Yeah.
of HIPAA rules. It's very rare for me to see a spouse or a family member being able to advocate. Usually you can for your child, but even my husband couldn't get through because they're like, oh, do you have the power of attorney? I'm like, oh my goodness. So
Hmm.
it's hard. You're the sick person and you're also trying to advocate. So take lots of notes and just don't take no for an answer until you know it is actually the answer.
Yeah, they don't make it easy, and I'm a pharmacist, so I know exactly what a lot of people go through with prescription costs. I mean, I've written an article to try to help people from what my perspective is, and GoodRx is in there. A lot of switching from brand to generics. A lot of manufacturers will offer help as well, copay assistance and
Mhm.
things of that nature. So just Googling quickly, your medication if it's a brand, and then manufacturer coupon, you would be surprised. A lot of these coupons could save. Every day I save people hundreds of dollars with these coupons just by finding it for them because they are not aware. And it's not like in the commercial they don't advertise that to you. They advertise just ask your doctor for it.
Yeah.
So that's my way of helping. You mentioned CPT codes. Is that correct?
Yes. I
What?
blogged about using CPT codes, and I believe also I'm not a doctor. IDC 10 codes, I think what they are now.
Mm-hmm.
There are codes associated with procedures and with diagnoses, and those are the codes that translate into what an insurance company can or cannot cover. And it's this is one set of codes for the entire country, so everyone at the very least uses one system consistently. That being said, though, the doctors that suggest procedures and diagnostics for you, you can always just ask, can I please get a list of all the codes involved? And that allows a health insurance plan to be more accurate in telling you what degree they cover each of those things. And thankfully, my IVF clinic actually gave us the list of codes up front. But I remember when I had my root canal, and also when my husband was going in to get like a sprained shoulder checked out, and they wanted to do an MRI or something like that. We're like, oh, MRI. So we did a lot of calling, wasted a lot of our time, but it was all to avoid like situations where you just get billed for something that shouldn't have been billed in the first place.
Right. So you recommend before going to the doctor's office or whatever treatment, call them, ask them what typical CPT codes are used or what treatments are usually recommended during that visit. Then you'll call your insurance just to get an idea of what is covered, what isn't. And that way you can go in there knowing, exactly what they're about to recommend, what they're about to do, and how that's gonna affect, your cost. And then if they pop something up in the middle of the consultation, you kind of just hold them and say, hey, can we do this next time? And then you
Yeah.
do the same thing.
Yeah. For example, some labs, even during pregnancy, are optional. Not all scans have to be done. Not all blood work has to be done. So I often say, is this blood work necessary? Is this essential or is this optional? Like just even asking that before like they take your blood away from you, it can save you a couple $100s here and there as well.
Wow, awesome. And I mean, even if you spent 5 hours or 10 hours trying to accumulate that binder and make phone calls, etc., you save $10,000. I mean,
Mhm.
that how much is that an hour? That's like $1,000, two
I don't
thousand
make
dollars an
anywhere
hour.
close to that. So,
Exactly.
and definitely not after tax. So yeah, it's important to advocate. And I know it's hard, but I have a friend who, spent months and months advocating for her very sick child to receive at-home care paid for by Medicaid, for example. And it is common. This is a federal system. We have different standards by state. So just keep at it and do the research, Google and see what other people have done. I've even discovered, for example, I was asked to do a experimental genetic test that used my blood and my husband's blood rather than anything from our baby to check for potential genetic abnormalities. And there's a lot of those tests out there. I got a provisional bill from the testing company for $7,000. I was like, this is not what I signed up for. I was not signing for a $7,000 bill. I thought our most was like a few hundred. I
Yeah.
Googled the name of the company. I Googled, did anyone else go through this? Apparently, yes, because it's experimental. It sometimes doesn't get covered by the health insurance company. But they said call the customer service line of the genetic test company to see what they can do for you. So I wrote a very nice email, talking about my IV attorney and how I did all my research and I really appreciate the services they provide. But I really hope I'm not paying $7,000 for this. And turns out the customer service rep got back to me right away. It's like, oh, I'm really sorry about that. That shouldn't be right. At most, you'd be responsible for $250, which I thought was way more reasonable. And actually, in the end, it ended up being covered anyway. So, but
Nice.
even doing that to make sure you're not on the hook for $7,000 is very important.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems like you've got a good strategy. You go in there, with a nice attitude first, it seems like. You try to, because, I've been blacklisted. My wife is, we sometimes call, we had an issue with the travel agency that we were trying to cancel, etc. And then by the end of it, I think we made like 7 calls, we got blacklisted. So important not to go in there a little too hot, and try to give them a chance to reverse what they might have messed up. We're all human, and they might have just not realized that they were charging you when they didn't have to, or they shouldn't have.
Yeah. And it's usually also not the CSR's fault that, they're the customer service rep. They're here to help solve the problem, but they shouldn't be the one that you pick on. And they get angry customers all the time. And so I've found that if you keep your voice calm, take a deep breath, mute and then scream on the phone, and try to be nice, it can make a huge difference in their willingness to help you.
Definitely. Well, that is awesome. So I think we got a lot there, and I hope this helps my audience. And I want to end with just a few questions. You mentioned a lot of books, and I'm going to have that in the show notes below so that everybody can find them. But what is your personal recommendation for maybe a book to get people started? It could be personal finance, it could be mindset. What would you recommend for someone, just starting out?
2 books. One has no numbers in it, which is great. The Millionaire Next Door. I think that was the most influential book in terms of me understanding how gathering wealth in an ordinary circumstance works. And yeah, there's plenty of people who are millionaires from being teachers and non-6-figure jobs. The other book, which is more on the mental side, I would recommend starting with the book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. Very, very famous book. It addresses mindset in 3 areas: education, sports, and business. How to adapt a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And also, she is a PhD, but it's not written so heavily that you wouldn't understand it. So they're both very accessible, and I highly recommend both.
Awesome. So thank you for that recommendation. And then to end, where can people find you? And do you have anything coming up that you'd maybe like to share?
Yes. Oh gosh. So I'm always on Instagram and my website, savemysense.com, and then on Instagram at savemysense. I am currently working on a digital course on mindset, taking everything that I've received from the universe and putting that against mostly a personal finance goal, but also just helping people release, negative self-beliefs and limiting self-beliefs, and actually using the trigger action reward technique to use the same triggers that lead to fear and anxiety now to actually lead to success. So hopefully that will drop summer of 2020, depending on how my son decides to spend my days. So yeah, progress, not perfection, but really appreciate, the community that I've plugged into on Instagram. It's wonderful. And I think that's how we found each other as well.
Yeah. So highly recommend checking out your Instagram, your blog, signing up for a coaching session, getting that course, that ebook that you're going to be publishing in the summer. So I just want to thank you again for being part of the show and for coming on and sharing your thoughts and advice.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Take care. Till next time. Hey everyone, I hope this episode was as useful to you as it was to me. I want to thank Shang again for coming on and dropping that knowledge and really showing us the power of mindset when we are pursuing financial independence, as well as just bettering our life. So I'm going to go ahead and include a lot of the resources in the show notes. And I want to address a few things. I do have a giveaway going on, and I do want to announce my first winner. This is for the previous episode, so it'll just be one episode behind. So for this episode, the winner of the giveaway is going to receive a $25 Amazon gift card. And I thought this would be useful because we spoke last time with Prescription and Paychecks about sunscreens and all types of products that we can use to improve our health and protect us from the sun. So hopefully this Amazon gift card could be used for sunscreens that were recommended. If not, it's okay. You can buy whatever you want, but I thought that might be a great fit. So the winner, without further ado, of the first giveaway goes to I am Ro Thomas. She is from Instagram, and she wrote a great review that I'd like to read. It says here, "Looking forward to more. I really enjoyed these first few episodes. Very relatable. Looking forward to more." So thank you again. I am Ro Thomas, and you are the first winner of the giveaway. So enjoy your $25 gift card to Amazon. I will be messaging you soon with that information. And if you want to join or enter the contest or help me out in the future, just go ahead and subscribe and leave a review, and send that review over to me at questions@inspiredfire.com. Again, questions@inspiredfire.com, or you can Instagram message me. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day.